The first time I wore my sister's clothes, the world tilted. One moment, I was a bored kid in an empty house. The next, I was standing in front of her open closet, pulse hammering, fingers shaking over silk and lace like I was touching forbidden treasure. Everything about it felt wrong. Too intimate. Too thrilling to stop. Chloe's skirt swallowed my knees. Her blouse hung loose, but when I caught my reflection in the mirror, lipstick crooked, eyeliner smudged, the air changed. The boy staring back was gone. In his place stood someone I didn't recognize, but instantly loved. For a breathless second, I wasn't pretending. I was becoming. The cleanup was a nightmare. The makeup refused to come off, leaving ghostly traces on my skin and worse on Chloe's clothes. When Mom found the stains later, she assumed Chloe was the culprit. My sister's indignant protest fell on deaf ears, and I stayed silent, terrified and guilty, but secretly thrilled by the memory. That thrill became an itch I couldn't resist scratching again. Summer came, and so did my downfall. One lazy afternoon, while I thought everyone was out, I pulled on one of Chloe's dresses, her white socks, and her shiny black shoes. Red lipstick, a shaky attempt at eyeliner. I was just starting to believe I almost looked right when the door opened. Mom stood there, silent, shocked, her eyes flicking over me like she was trying to understand what she was seeing. My stomach dropped through the floor. She didn't yell. That was worse. Calmly, she told me to change back, wash everything off, and meet her in the living room. I obeyed in silence, scrubbing my face until it burned, wishing I could vanish. When I finally sat down across from her, her expression was unreadable. She'd heard of people like me. She said people who felt different, but she'd never thought it could begin so young. Her questions came one after another, sharp and searching, slicing through my feeble denials until I broke down and told her the truth. I liked wearing girls' clothes. I didn't know why. I just did. And I also knew I wasn't supposed to. She sighed, tired, confused, maybe even scared. She didn't understand, not really. I knew Dad would understand even less. His world didn't have room for this kind of thing. After a long silence, she told me to go outside, play with my friends, act normal. I knew she needed time to think, so did I. 3 weeks later, she caught me again. I froze, waiting for anger, for punishment, but she said nothing. She just looked at me for a moment and left. That afternoon, Mom disappeared into the basement, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the quiet house. I waited upstairs, frozen with the dread that always came before a storm. When she returned, she wasn't holding anger. She was carrying a cardboard box. She opened it, checked inside, then gathered a few things and headed toward my room. When she stepped through the door, I flinched, caught halfway between guilt and confusion. Without a word, she placed the items neatly on my bed and turned to leave. I stared after her, stunned, until curiosity pulled me closer. On the bed lay a folded brown dress with a pink sash, a pair of soft white tights, and neatly stacked white cotton panties. My heart thudded in my chest. Slowly, I stripped off Chloe's borrowed dress, almost reverently, like I was shedding one skin for another, and reached for what Mom had left. The cotton felt fresh and cool as I pulled it on, the tights smooth against my legs. Then came the dress, simple warm brown fabric, that slipped over my shoulders and settled perfectly against me. I turned toward the mirror as I zipped it up, my hands trembling. It fit better than anything I'd ever tried. The black shoes she'd brought waited beside the bed. I stepped into them, and to my amazement, they were just right, no pinching, no awkward gaps. I stood there, staring at my reflection, lost in the sight of the girl looking back, when Mom quietly reappeared behind me. "Now," she said softly, her voice even, "isn't that much better?" Tears welled in my eyes. I didn't know how to answer. My voice felt small and uncertain. Why was she doing this for me? "You know how your father always says anything worth doing is worth doing right?" I nodded, afraid to speak. Well, she continued, if you're going to dress as a girl, then you should learn to do it properly. Come with me! I followed her into her bedroom, the hem of my dress brushing my knees as it swayed. The soft swish of fabric filled me with a strange delight that made me want to twirl. She sat me down in front of her vanity, its big mirror framed with light bulbs that hummed faintly. Mom worked quietly, almost methodically. She undid my ponytail, combed through my hair, and set small rollers with practiced hands. You don't need much makeup, she murmured, handing me a small brush. Just a touch here, a bit of color there. She showed me how to apply it carefully, how to stop before it became too much. When the rollers came out, she brushed my hair until it gleamed and sprayed it lightly, shaping the curls with her fingers. Two barrettes clicked into place on either side of my head. When I looked up, my breath caught. I didn't just see myself, I saw Chloe. Or rather, what I might have looked like if I'd been born her. Mom smiled faintly. We can't call you Ethan now, can we? She said, tilting her head. Do you have a name you like? A girl's name? I shook my head, too overwhelmed to think. If you'd been born a girl, she continued, her voice softening, we were going to name you Sarah. Sarah May. How does that sound? The name shimmered through me, like sunlight through water. Sarah May. It fit in a way my real name never had. I smiled, really smiled for the first time that day. Let's go downstairs, Sarah, Mom said. Your father will be home soon. I think he'll want to meet you. My stomach lurched. The spell broke, replaced by sheer panic. Wait, what? I whispered, but she was already taking my hand. Her grip was gentle yet firm as she led me down the stairs, the sound of my shoes clicking softly against the wood. I felt like I was being led to judgment or execution. We sat in the family room, the air thick with silence. I heard the front door open, the heavy sound of Dad's boots crossing the floor. I couldn't breathe. He stopped in front of me, studying me the way he might examine a broken appliance, trying to decide whether to fix it or throw it away. I see your mother decided to help you, he said finally, his tone unreadable. Are you comfortable? I didn't dare move. My heart hammered so loudly it was all I could hear. It's okay, son, he said after a pause. We talked about it. If you really need to do this, then we'll help you. Chloe's at Grandma's this weekend. You look nice. Just follow what's in your heart, and you'll be okay. Maybe we should go out for dinner or something. The words didn't make sense at first. Dinner? Like this? But somehow we did. That night, Sarah May had her first night out. We went to a small diner downtown, the kind with red booths and buzzing neon lights. I sat between them, small and quiet, praying no one would recognize me. And when two of my classmates walked in, laughing over milkshakes, they didn't. Their eyes swept right past me. For the first time, I understood what it meant to disappear and to be seen, all at once. I was terrified, elated, thrilled. The world hadn't ended. It had simply changed shape around me. When we got home, I went straight to my room and stood before the mirror again. The girl in the reflection smiled back, alive in a way I'd never been before. After that night, we never spoke of it again. But sometimes, when I came home from school, I'd find a new dress folded neatly on my bed, waiting for Sarah May. Every few months, as if by magic, a new outfit would appear, a blouse, a skirt, sometimes a pair of shoes. Nothing was ever said, and yet everything was understood. By the time I reached my mid-teens, Sarah May was no longer a shadow in the mirror, but someone I could bring to life with practiced ease. I'd learned to do my own hair, found the right shades of foundation, and could pull together an outfit with confidence. At school, things were shifting too. A few students, like Alex and Jake, had already come out as gay, and Taylor was openly wearing makeup sometimes. The shock that used to accompany such revelations had faded into mild curiosity. Most of us were too busy just trying to survive adolescence to care much about how anyone else lived. That quiet acceptance made something in me stir, maybe. Just maybe. It was time for Sarah to exist beyond the walls of my bedroom. One Saturday afternoon, I sat across from my mother in the kitchen and told her what I wanted. I spoke slowly, choosing my words, explaining that I needed to be seen as who I truly was, not just at home, but in the world. She listened without interrupting, her knitting needles still in her lap. When I finished, she exhaled and said softly, "Your father has to know, sweetheart. Before you do anything." The weight of that truth settled in my stomach. Dad. There was no hiding from him forever. I went upstairs to get ready. I showered, shaved my legs until they were smooth, and stood before the mirror, studying my reflection like an artist before a canvas. I started with the pink panties and sheer pantyhose, their cool nylon clinging to my skin. The skirt I chose was dark blue and green, pleated and crisp, falling mid-thigh short, but not too daring. I filled out a white bra with rolled-up pairs of old stockings, adjusting the straps until it sat just right beneath my white blouse, with its Peter Pan collar and puffy sleeves. A dark green sweater completed the look, the collar of the blouse peeking neatly over the neckline. Then came the makeup light foundation, blue shadow with plum highlights, a careful line of black eyeliner, and a touch of mascara. A bit of blush. Lipstick the color of ripe cherries. I brushed my hair up into a high ponytail and tied it with a blue and green scrunchie that matched my skirt. When I stepped into my low black heels and fastened my gold necklace, I caught sight of myself in the mirror and froze. Sarah May was there again, older now, poised, sure of herself. My hands trembled as I walked downstairs. Mom was sitting in her usual chair, knitting, the lamp casting a golden glow over her face. She looked up and smiled, genuinely smiled. "Hello, Sarah," she said, setting her yarn aside. "You've grown up since the last time we saw you." A shy smile tugged at my lips. "Thank you, Mom." "Stand up, dear. Let me see you." I rose and turned slowly, the skirt whispering around my legs. Her eyes softened as she studied me. "You look lovely, just like Chloe at your age." Then, with a quiet sigh, she added, "With just a little help, you'd be beautiful." "Is this what you want to show Dad?" she asked. I nodded. "I can handle it. The other kids at school, they might be surprised, but maybe I'm not the only one who feels this way." Her gaze drifted to my skirt. "Is that new? I don't remember seeing it before." "I bought it," I said quietly. Her eyebrow arched. "You've been out like this?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, that's when I bought it. The bra too, I bet." I didn't answer. She didn't press. We waited in silence until the sound of the front door broke the stillness. Dad's footsteps echoed down the hall, familiar and steady. He appeared in the doorway, started to speak. "You look just like your sister. Wait, who are you? I thought Chloe was at Grandma's." He stopped short. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not Chloe. You're—" "Sarah," I said softly. "Sarah May." He blinked. "What's this all about, son?" So I told him. Everything. The words tumbled out how I'd felt for years. How dressing like this made me feel right. How my classmates might react. And how new laws were being passed to protect people like me. "I know it'll be hard, Dad," I said, tears blurring my vision. "But I can't keep pretending anymore. I just can't." He stood there for a long moment, his jaw tightening, his expression unreadable. My father was the definition of a man's man, steady, strong, unbending. The kind who fixed what broke, didn't complain, didn't cry. Watching him struggle to understand was like watching steel bend under heat. Finally, he exhaled and stepped forward. His hand came to rest on my shoulder, firm but not rough. "You've given me a lot to think about," he said, voice low. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled me into a hug. I froze, then melted against him as his arms tightened around me. His chest shook, and I felt his tears against my hair. Mine came too, soaking through his shirt. "It'll take me some time," he whispered. "But I guess I'll have to get used to having another girl in the house. Huh, Sarah?" That was his way of saying it was okay. When Mom called us for dinner, the air between us had changed fragile, but peaceful. I knew the hardest part was yet to come. Monday morning, my first day at school as Sarah May. After dinner, Mom touched my shoulder and said, "If you're really going to do this, we'll do it properly. You can't be Ethan one day and Sarah the next. It's all or nothing now." I nodded, my heart pounding. "Then let's go to the Westwood Mall," she said, her eyes soft but determined. "You'll need a few things." I didn't know exactly what she had in mind, only that, whatever it was, I was ready for it. And for the first time, I felt something close to hope. We drove to the mall that evening, my nerves wound tight as a spool of thread. I had no idea what Mom had planned, but the glint in her eyes told me she did. And whatever it was, she wasn't turning back. Our first stop was a boutique called Anya's Intimates, a place that radiated soft music, pastel lights, and the faint scent of lavender. The sign in the window promised feminine confidence for every woman. When we stepped inside, the clerk, a woman with kind eyes and a silver necklace shaped like a heart, looked at us expectantly. Mom didn't waste time. "We're here for breast forms," she said, her voice firm. "My daughter is transitioning and needs assistance finding the right fit." I nearly melted into the floor. My face went hot, my stomach twisted. But the saleswoman only smiled, as though she'd heard every possible version of this story before. Within minutes, I was behind a curtain, undressed to the waist, while she took precise measurements. The tape was cool against my skin, her tone professional and calm, which somehow made the embarrassment worse. But an hour later, I emerged with something close to magic, a pair of silicone breast forms that matched my skin perfectly. They adhered with special glue, warm to the touch, and when I moved, they moved. They weren't props, they were part of me. Afterward, Mom led me through the mall as though she were presenting a debutante to the world. We bought skirts and blouses, 2 dresses, 1 soft pastel, 1 deep navy, and a delicate perfume that she insisted should be mine alone. At her urging, I had my ears pierced at a kiosk, wincing but proud. Then we went to the salon, where the stylist gave me my first proper manicure and styled my hair into soft, bouncing curls. By the time we reached Grant's department store, I was exhausted but glowing. We picked out lingerie, real panties, real bras, and by the time we finally trudged home, our arms full of shopping bags, even Mom admitted she was wiped. Dad took one look at my freshly styled hair, the pierced ears, the carefully painted nails, and simply shook his head. Not in anger, just a wordless kind of disbelief. "Long day?" he muttered. I didn't answer. I just headed upstairs, the hem of my new skirt brushing against my legs, the faint scent of my perfume trailing behind me. That night, I called my best friend, Liam. "I made a decision," I told him, my voice trembling but firm. "Starting today, I'm dressing as a girl. For real." There was silence on the other end, then a confused laugh. "You're serious?" "I am." The conversation turned quickly to questions why, how, what do you look like, all tumbling out of him in disbelief. But when I mentioned meeting up at the mall after church, he agreed without hesitation. Curiosity, if nothing else, had him hooked. Later, I changed into the pale blue nightgown Mom had given me, satin soft, delicate at the neckline. I curled up on the couch to watch TV, tucking my legs beneath me like I'd seen Chloe do countless times. The posture came naturally now. Sleep didn't. I tried to rest without ruining my hair, not realizing until morning that the stylist had given me a perm. The next day, we went to church my first Sunday as Sarah May. I wore my best dress, the one that twirled when I walked. Most people mistook me for Chloe, and I caught their double takes with quiet amusement. Dad corrected them every time, his voice steady. "This is Sarah." It made me both proud and terrified. After lunch, I changed into my mall outfit, the green and blue skirt, the white blouse, my new heels, and filled my purse with tissues, my wallet, lipstick, and a compact mirror. The walk to the mall was only a few blocks, but every step felt electric. My curls bounced in the sunlight. The air smelled of car exhaust and freedom. I spotted Liam sitting alone in the cafeteria area, his hands drumming on a soda can. I waved, but when his eyes met mine, there was no recognition. He looked straight through me. I smiled, circled behind him, and leaned in. "Hi, Liam!" He turned, blinked, and then came the slow dawning of realization. "Wait, it's you, isn't it?" "Sure is," I said lightly. "Sarah May, why don't you grab us something to drink?" He rose without thinking, polite, automatic, conditioned to respond to a girl's request. It made me grin. When he returned, he asked if the drink was okay, something he'd never have asked Ethan. "You look different than I expected," he admitted, studying me. I smirked. "What did you expect, a clown?" He chuckled nervously. "No, I guess I didn't know what to expect." His gaze flicked downward. "Those real?" I could have lied, but didn't. "No, they're prosthetic. Some women use them after surgery. They're amazing, actually." He nodded, strangely respectful now. When I excused myself to use the restroom, I saw his eyes follow me toward the ladies' room, curiosity mixed with disbelief. By the time I returned, something had shifted between us. The awkwardness had dulled into familiarity. We walked together through the mall, me tugging him into shops and cooing over dresses. At first he squirmed, but I noticed him relaxing, smiling even, like he was learning to see me anew. We ran into a group of classmates near the escalators: Emily, Olivia, Ryan, Alex, Jake, and Taylor. I felt Liam tense beside me. Emily squinted. "You look so familiar." "I'm Chloe's sister," I said casually. Her eyes widened. "Wait, you're Ethan, aren't you?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "I used to be Ethan. Now I'm Sarah May. I've always felt this way. When I told my parents, they understood. And honestly, you've all accepted Alex, Jake, and Taylor, why not me?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Olivia nodded slowly, the tension dissolving. "You do look amazing," she said softly. Emily agreed, smiling as she eyed my curls and painted nails. Ryan slipped an arm around Emily. Noah took Olivia's hand. And then, hesitantly, Liam reached out and took mine. We spent the afternoon walking the mall together, 6 teenagers, laughing, talking, sharing fries and stories. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. When we eventually headed back to my house, Mom saw us coming up the driveway, Liam's hand still in mine. She didn't say a word, just smiled faintly and opened the door. I introduced everyone, and we settled into the family room while she offered snacks. The girls followed her to the kitchen to help, chattering and giggling, while the boys stayed behind. Ryan glanced at Liam, lowering his voice. "So, why do you think Ethan's doing this?" Noah leaned back on the couch, frowning. "He never gave me any impression he liked to dress as a girl before." Liam just shrugged, his eyes fixed on the muted glow of the TV. "I've known him since kindergarten. Noah and I never knew either." He paused, then added quietly, "But she's right about one thing." The word she slipped out naturally, without correction. "Most of the kids'll accept her as she is. And she's been my friend for so long, I don't think that changes." Moments later, we came in from the kitchen, balancing trays loaded with sandwiches and soda cans. The boys went silent for a second, but I just smiled and handed out plates, like nothing had happened. We spent the next hour sprawled across the family room, half watching a movie, half playing silly computer games. For once, no one seemed to care how I looked or what I wore. I was just me. When the others left, Emily lingered by the door. "Hey, we're all going to the skating rink tonight," she said, eyes bright. "You should come." I turned to Mom. Can I? She studied me for a moment, then nodded. What time? 7, I said, grinning. Fine, she said, standing up. But if you're going, you'll need one more thing. Come upstairs. I followed her to my room. She disappeared for a moment, then returned holding something folded in her hand. Here, she said. I unfolded it, a black panty from a leotard set. If you fall, you'll be flashing everyone. Wear this under your skirt. I'll bet most of the other girls do. I laughed, embarrassed but grateful. Thanks, Mom, she smiled. You'll thank me later. By 7, I was ready. Emily showed up wearing a similar outfit, pleated skirt, sweater, lipstick, just a shade lighter than mine. We sat together in the back seat of her mom's car on the 20-minute ride to the rink, chatting like any two girls heading out for the night. I had my own skates, still the black ones from my old life, but at the rink's pro shop I bought a pair of green covers that matched my skirt. Emily grinned approvingly as we laced up on the bench. The doors opened, the music started, and the smell of popcorn and waxed wood filled the air. Liam and Ryan arrived just as we were tying the last knots in our laces. Emily caught sight of them first. Game time, she whispered, tugging my hand as we rolled onto the floor. I held back, cautious. I'd always skated fast and loose as Ethan, but in a skirt and tights, I moved differently, lighter somehow. Liam skated over as Ryan swept Emily into the flow of the crowd. The music slowed, the lights dimmed, and without thinking, Liam turned in front of me, with a smooth mohawk turn, arms extended. I hesitated only a second before taking his hands. The waltz began, slow and lilting. We glided across the polished floor in an easy rhythm, tracing figure eights under the sparkle of the mirrored ball. The world shrank to music, motion, and light. My skirt flared in every turn, and for once, I was glad for Mom's practical advice. The DJ shifted tempos, waltz to quickstep to tango, and we stayed together through all of it, spinning, laughing, moving like we'd been partners for years. By the time we stepped off the floor, my cheeks were flushed, my curls damp with sweat. Liam grinned. You're good, Sarah. I mean, really good. I bet we could beat Emily and Ryan in the next contest. I laughed, catching my breath. You think so? Before he could answer, Emily and Ryan joined us, breathless and smiling. Damn, Sarah, Emily said. You two were amazing out there. I might need lessons. We ordered drinks and sat around one of the little plastic tables, the kind that always felt sticky no matter how many times they were wiped down. The conversation turned to jokes and teasing until Emily suddenly leaned toward me. Ladies' room? She asked, and I nodded. Inside, under the hum of fluorescent lights, she leaned against the mirror and said casually, So, has Liam kissed you yet? Kissed me? Heck no! I laughed. He's only known about me for a day. Her grin widened. He wants to. You can see it. I froze, lipstick halfway to my lips. What makes you think that? The look in his eyes, she said simply. We touched up our makeup, neither of us saying more, and went back out. I found myself watching Liam differently now. He was waiting near the rink entrance, smiling when he saw me. That smile, wide, easy, genuine, sent a strange warmth through me. When he took my hand and led me back onto the floor, I didn't pull away. The night blurred into music and motion. Olivia and Noah arrived, their skates gleaming under the lights, and soon a contest was announced. Liam didn't hesitate. He scribbled our names onto the list, while Ryan did the same for himself and Emily. The floor filled with couples as the opening waltz began, the mirrored ball spinning slow arcs of light. The DJ's voice echoed through the speakers. First dance, the 10-step! We took our positions. Olivia and Noah moved like they'd been born on skates, flawless and fast. Emily and Ryan were showy, dramatic. Liam and I, we were something in between. I could feel the rhythm through his hand at my waist, his signals subtle but sure. I followed every turn, every dip, my confidence growing with each pass. Then came the mishaps. One couple stumbled. Another dropped out after a fall. Olivia's wheel broke, and she and Noah left the floor, laughing in defeat. The tempo changed again. Liam leaned closer. You think you can handle a throw jump? My heart skipped. You mean the kind where you toss me? He nodded, grinning. Exactly. I looked at the empty stretch of rink ahead of us, the smooth floor gleaming under the lights, the music swelling to its peak. I took a deep breath and nodded. Let's do it. Liam stayed close, his hand firm at my waist as I lifted off the floor. For a heartbeat, I was weightless. The skirt of my dress flared like a halo of color, lights flashing off the mirrored ball above. Then gravity reclaimed me, and I landed neatly, my wheels touching down with a soft click, just as his arm caught me again. We spun once, perfectly in sync, before gliding to a stop as the crowd cheered. By then, it was down to the final two pairs, Ryan and Emily, against Liam and me. The tempo rose, the music driving faster, our bodies moving with it. Sweat trickled down my back, my legs burning, but the thrill of it kept me pushing harder. Liam slipped once, his skate catching on a groove, and that tiny mistake cost us the win. Ryan and Emily took first place, though the grin on Liam's face told me he didn't care. When we left the rink, laughter still echoing in my ears, Liam offered to take me home. His dad drove, quiet and polite, the hum of the car filling the silence between us. Halfway home, Liam shifted closer, his arm brushing mine. Then, without a word, he slipped it around my shoulders and leaned in. The kiss was light, brief, more question than statement, but it sent a rush through me all the same. At my door, he lingered. "Good night, Sarah," he said softly. "Good night, Liam." He watched me step inside before driving away, and I stood for a moment with my back against the door, heart pounding, wondering if he'd tell anyone what he'd just done. Mom was on the couch when I walked in, the blue glow of the television flickering across her face. "Have a nice time, dear?" she asked gently. "It was great, Mom," I said, smiling. "Liam and I skated against Emily and Ryan. We lost, but not next time." She chuckled. "Then I guess you'd better get ready for bed, honey." Upstairs, I undressed carefully, folding my clothes and putting everything back in its place. That's when I noticed a small package wrapped in red tissue paper on my bed. I tore it open and found a flannel nightgown, soft and warm. My first real one. I pulled it over my head, slid my feet into my slippers, and padded downstairs to say goodnight. Mom muted the TV and looked me over with that knowing expression only mothers have. "Did he try to kiss you, Sarah?" I froze, blushing. "What?" "Mom, no, he knows that I was, you know, a guy like him." She raised an eyebrow. "Right, but he did kiss you, didn't he?" I hesitated, smiling despite myself. She knew the answer. "Just be careful, sweetheart," she said softly, her tone suddenly serious. "He might understand, but not everyone will. Some people can be cruel, and I don't ever want to see you hurt." Before I could reply, the phone rang. Mom answered, and I watched the color drain from her face. "Get dressed," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "We have to go to the hospital." The air went cold around me. I ran upstairs, pulling on jeans, the same sweater I'd worn to the rink, and my new flats. A quick swipe of lipstick, my coat, and we were out the door. The drive through the night was silent, except for the hum of the tires and the pounding of my heart. Dread sat heavy between us like a third passenger. At the hospital, a doctor met us in the hallway, his expression grave. "I'm sorry," he began softly. "There was nothing we could do. The explosion caused—" He didn't finish. Mom's cry broke through his words, raw and sharp. My knees gave out beneath me, and we held onto each other, sobbing in the sterile hallway under the hum of fluorescent lights. When I finally found my voice, I went to the payphone and called Grandpa. "You'd better come to the hospital," I said, my throat tight. "There's been an accident." That was all it took. 20 minutes later, Grandpa arrived, bringing the rest of the family in waves, my Aunt Mary, Uncle Paul, cousins, all pale and stricken. Aunt Mary called Chloe at State University, her voice trembling as she told her what had happened, then left to bring her home. Grandpa drove us back to the house, his weathered hand resting on Mom's as he tried to comfort her, though nothing could. Grief, I learned that night, is something no one can share. You can sit beside someone in their pain, but you can't carry it for them. At home, he poured us each a small glass of brandy. "For the nerves," he said, and we sat together in the quiet until a knock came at the door. A tall man in a brown overcoat stood there, his hat in his hands. "I'm Bill Gather," he said gently, "plant manager at the shop. May I come in?" We led him into the living room. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor," he said, voice heavy. "He was a good man. We'll all miss him." Mom's voice wavered. "How did it happen, Bill?" "There was a ruptured gas main," he explained. "That's what he'd been called in to repair. Someone nearby struck a spark. He was right in the hole when it blew." His eyes lowered. "If there's anything I can do, please call me." He set his card on the table and left quietly. The house felt enormous once he was gone. Empty. Mom and I sat side by side on the couch, numb, our hands locked together. We didn't speak. There was nothing to say, just the low tick of the clock and the distant rumble of passing cars. Finally, Grandpa poured us both another small shot and guided us upstairs. He made sure we were tucked in like children, then went downstairs to wait for Chloe's arrival. When she came home before dawn, the house was full of whispers and tears. The funeral followed days later. The factory shut down completely so everyone could attend. I remember the endless rows of solemn faces, the smell of flowers, the low hum of voices. I stood beside Mom and Chloe, clutching their hands, and tried to hold myself together as they lowered my father into the ground. And in that moment, surrounded by people who'd known him longer than I'd been alive, I realized something quiet and certain. I was his daughter, whether he had time to see it or not. The funeral brought the entire town to a standstill. Nearly everyone from the plant came, men in dark suits, women clutching tissues, all of them faces I half recognized from stories Dad used to tell. They closed the factory for the day, and the line of cars in the procession stretched nearly a mile behind us, a somber snake of headlights winding through the gray morning. The eulogies were quiet, heartfelt, full of respect, and the kind of admiration that breaks your heart because it's too late for the person it's meant for. When the casket was finally lowered into the ground at Maple Grove Cemetery, Mom's cry rose like something torn from her soul. Chloe's followed, raw and helpless. Mine caught in my throat until it burst free, the sound of a child mourning the man who had once made her feel safe in every storm. That safety was gone now, buried beneath the earth with him. After the wake, when the last neighbors drifted away and the house fell silent, the three of us sat in the living room, surrounded by wilting flowers and half-empty dishes. It was Chloe who broke the stillness. She turned toward me, her eyes red but sharp. "Why are you in dresses, Ethan?" "And at Dad's funeral? Of all times?" Before I could answer, Mom's voice cut in, steady but firm. "Wait a minute, Chloe. She has our permission to dress that way. In fact, I doubt if Ethan will ever return to this house again." That silenced the room. Even I was taken aback by the finality of her words. Chloe looked between us, her expression softening as she absorbed them. "I guess I flew off the handle," she murmured. "Sorry, Sarah." The days that followed were long and shapeless, grief hanging over everything like a heavy fog. But life has a cruel way of continuing, even when you don't feel ready to follow it. By the end of the week, we were sitting around the kitchen table, eating in the same quiet rhythm we always had, when Chloe spoke again. "You know," she said, stirring her coffee, "there's another girl like you at school. I can't remember her real name, Bunny or Bambi, or maybe Barbara, but I've seen her around. Rumor is she's been dressing as a girl since junior high. She's nice, and honestly, she's really pretty. I can get her number if you want. I looked up, startled. The idea that there was someone else out there, another person who understood what it felt like to live between two worlds, sent a strange thrill through me. Yes, I said quickly. I'd like that. Very much. Chloe smiled. I thought you might. Mom nodded, setting her fork down. We also need to decide what to tell your grandfather. He didn't say anything during the funeral, but I could tell he was worried. I'll tell him, I said. Sunday after church. But I want you there, Mom. She agreed. That Sunday, the three of us drove to Grandpa and Grandma's house, the familiar white porch dusted with early spring snow. Grandma Martha opened the door with her usual warmth. Come in, come in. I'll make some coffee. We hung our coats by the door and went into the big living room that always smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and lemon polish. Grandpa rose from his chair, his shoulders heavy, but his eyes brightening at the sight of us. He hugged Chloe and Mom easily enough, but when it came to me, there was a pause, just a flicker, before he put his arms around me. It was gentle but uncertain. Mom broke the silence. Dad, we wanted to come today because there's something you need to understand about Sarah. Grandpa turned his gaze to me, the weight of his grief still shadowing his face. What he saw wasn't the boy he'd once taken fishing, but a girl sitting nervously in a pale blue dress, hands clasped in her lap. Grandpa, I began, my voice shaking. I've been dressing like this since I was little. I don't know why, I just always needed to. Mom knows, and Dad did too. He told me once that as long as I followed what was in my heart, I'd be okay. I swallowed hard. You told him that. Remember? He leaned back, silent for a long moment, his pipe resting forgotten on the arm of his chair. My own words hung in the air between us. His words, really, turned back toward him. Finally, he nodded slowly. You're right, Sarah. I did say that. And I don't understand this, not one bit. You're not a girl, not in the way I was raised to think. But if your mother says it's okay, then I guess it's not my place to say otherwise. He sighed, a sound of resignation rather than anger. You're always welcome here, no matter what. It might take me some time to get used to calling you Sarah, but... He opened his arms. Come here, sweetheart. I didn't walk, I ran. The familiar smell of his aftershave, the faint trace of tobacco on his sweater, it all brought me back to safer days. I curled against him, the tears I hadn't expected spilling freely. Grandma returned just then, her voice light and practical. Coffee's ready, she announced, which, in her language, meant sandwiches and pie were waiting too. We ate and talked for hours about Chloe's classes, Grandma's garden, and me. Grandpa asked carefully if I'd be dressing like this at school. Of course, I said. Most of the kids already know. They'll deal with it. The truth was, I hadn't yet gone back. The funeral had taken the whole week, and grief had made time stretch. I assumed by now Liam had told everyone anyway. When we finally said our goodbyes, Grandpa kissed my cheek and told me to call him any time. That meant more to me than I could say. Back home, Chloe caught my arm on the stairs. Hey, come to my room for a sec. I followed her in, and she gestured to a pile of clothes stacked neatly on her bed. These are for you, Sarah. Claire and I are moving into an apartment, and I can't take everything with me. You might as well have them. My throat tightened as I looked through them: skirts, blouses, a winter coat, even a few pairs of shoes that actually fit. You mean you're moving out for good? Yeah. She smiled faintly. Claire and I both got grants and part-time jobs. I need to do this. I need a little space, you know? I nodded. I understood. More than she realized. She patted my shoulder. Put those away while I go tell Mom. I carried the clothes to my room, carefully hanging each one in my closet as I listened to the murmur of their voices downstairs. Later that evening, we drove her back to campus, the car quiet but peaceful. When we pulled away after saying goodbye, Mom sighed, her hands tight on the wheel. Well, she said softly, glancing at me with a small, tired smile. Looks like it's just you and me now, Sarah. I never expected all these changes not this fast. Neither had I. But as the lights of the campus faded behind us, I knew that the next change, the biggest yet, was waiting for me the very next morning. Because tomorrow, for the first time, I would walk into school not as Ethan, but as Sarah May. The morning of my first day as Sarah dawned pale and quiet, a soft pink glow spilling through the curtains. My stomach fluttered with nerves, but beneath it was something steadier determination. I had waited for this moment my whole life, even when I hadn't known what it was I was waiting for. I got up early, showered, and stood before the mirror, studying the reflection that still startled me sometimes. My breast forms had been off overnight, the weekly ritual to give my skin a chance to breathe, and I carefully cleaned and glued them back into place, smoothing the edges until they looked completely natural. Then came the familiar layers: panties, bra, the faint rustle of fabric that always made me smile. At the vanity, I applied my makeup with deliberate care. A hint of foundation, soft green eyeshadow blended with precision, a thin line of black eyeliner, and mascara to finish the look. The girl staring back looked alive, even confident. I brushed a hand through my hair, still soft from the night before, and turned to my outfit, laid out on the bed a pink and gray checked circle skirt with a matching pink belt, and a light gray blouse I'd pressed the night before. The pink flats, earrings, and a few touches of gold jewelry finished it off. When I added the rose lipstick, the transformation was complete. Mom was in the kitchen when I came down, coffee mug in hand. She smiled, a real one, the kind that still reached her eyes, even through the grief. "You look nice, Sarah. Be careful at school." "I will," I said, hugging her tightly. My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding. The walk to school felt longer than usual, every step echoing in my head. When I finally reached the doors, I didn't hesitate, not this time. The letter from Mom was folded neatly in my hand as I went straight to the office. "I'd like to see Mrs. Lewis, please," I told the secretary. She nodded and led me down the hall. Mrs. Lewis looked up when I entered. "Hello, Sarah," she said, her tone warm and steady. "I've been expecting you." I must have looked nervous, because she gave me a reassuring smile. "You have some very good friends. Liam, Ryan, and Emily came in earlier this week to talk to me. They told me about your decision and made it very clear that they support you completely." The tension in my chest eased. "Yes, ma'am," I said, and I told her everything about the first time I dressed up, about Dad's acceptance, and about wanting to start fresh now that it was just Mom and me. When I finished, she nodded thoughtfully. "You look lovely, dear, but there will be a few changes. You can't be using the boys' locker room. For obvious reasons, we'll sort that out today. Go on to your first class, and I'll send your new schedule once it's ready." I thanked her and left, walking the familiar halls that suddenly felt brand new. The first bell had already rung when I reached my classroom. For a moment, I froze at the door. Now or never, I thought, and pushed it open. Every head turned. For a heartbeat, the world went silent, just me, a dozen wide eyes, and the sound of my own pulse. Then I saw it. Pink ribbons tied all over my desk. Someone's idea of a joke. I swallowed, forced a smile, and walked calmly to my seat. "Good morning," the teacher said, barely missing a beat. "It's Sarah, right?" "Yes," I said quietly, then added, "Sarah May." A few kids stared a little too long, whispering to each other, but before long they went back to their notebooks. By the end of class, it was as if I'd been there all along. When the bell rang, Ms. Miller stopped me at the door. "Sarah, I'm very sorry about your father. If there's anything we can do, let me know, all right?" Her kindness nearly undid me. "Thank you, ma'am," I managed, and left with my head high. One hurdle down. Emily caught me in the hall. "Hey, you made it," she grinned. "We've been spreading the word most of the kids are cool with it, but watch out for Victor Stone and his bunch. They're already talking. Got it, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. Math was next. I walked in, nerves tight again, but no one said a word. The teacher didn't hesitate. Miss Adams, can you answer this? For a moment, the title caught me off guard. Miss Adams. It sounded strange. Wonderful. I answered wrong at first, then corrected myself, and the day rolled on from there, smooth, almost ordinary. Until lunch. I was walking with Emily and Olivia when Victor and his pack of thick-headed shadows appeared, blocking the hall. Well, well, he sneered. I heard you were a sissy, Adams. Just didn't realize how much. You ever make it with a guy? The words hit like a slap. Before I could even breathe, Emily stepped forward, small but fierce. That's enough, Victor. Leave her alone. Her voice was calm, cutting. He stared at her, smirked, then turned away with a muttered curse. His gang followed, laughing under their breath. I exhaled shakily. Thanks, Emily. I think I could have handled him, but— You dummy, she said, half laughing, half scolding. Girls don't fight guys like that. You've got to learn the rules now. I smiled weakly. Guess I still have a lot to learn. We split up for class, but the heat in my chest didn't fade. I made it through the rest of the day on adrenaline alone, each class easier than the last, until the final bell rang. And that's when they got me right on the way home. I didn't make it home that afternoon. The sun was low and the air sharp when a hand reached out of the shadows and yanked me off the sidewalk. Before I could even shout, I was dragged behind a cluster of trees where Victor and a few of his friends were waiting. They didn't come to talk. The taunts were quick and cruel, the blows harder. I remember the sound of leaves crunching, my breath caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. Then the pain came, and after that, nothing at all. When I opened my eyes again, the world was blurry and gray. Someone was kneeling beside me, Ms. Miller, my math teacher, her voice trembling as she called my name again and again. I could barely whisper when she asked what happened, but I managed to say the names that mattered: Victor Stone and Mark Jensen. The next thing I remember clearly is the bright whiteness of the hospital lights and Mom's face hovering over me, her eyes swollen from crying. My ribs ached, every breath sharp and shallow. The doctors spoke in low voices near the curtain fractures, internal damage, a long recovery. Words like serious and extensive floated through the haze. Detective James visited later that night. He spoke gently, but his questions made everything real again. Who, where, why? Mom stayed by my side, answering what I couldn't. By morning, the news had spread through school. Sarah Adams had been attacked. The boys responsible were gone, arrested before the day was out. The following week was a blur of painkillers, whispered updates, and cards from classmates who suddenly saw me not as a curiosity, but as someone fragile and human. The doctors said I'd heal, though it would take time. Mom listened to every word, her face a mix of sorrow and fierce resolve. When I was finally discharged, I walked out of that hospital, slower, smaller, but not broken. My body still ached, but my reflection in the mirror no longer frightened me. The girl looking back wasn't pretending anymore. She had survived something far worse than judgment. At home, friends stopped by with flowers and gossip, doing their best to make me laugh. Detective James came once more, telling us Victor would face adult charges for the attack. You were brave, he said before leaving. What you did speaking up, it matters. When the house was quiet again, I went upstairs, slipped into a soft skirt and blouse, and stood before the mirror. The faint line of healing on my skin reminded me of what I'd lost, but also what I'd found, the unshakable truth of who I was. Mom knocked gently on the door. You sure you're ready for school tomorrow? I nodded. I have to be. And early the next morning, I woke before dawn, dressed carefully, and faced the mirror one last time before stepping back into the world, not as the boy I'd been, nor the frightened girl who'd fallen, but as Sarah Mae Adams, who refused to disappear. Monday morning came bright and clear, the air crisp with the scent of spring. I woke early, nervous but eager, ready to face the world again. My reflection in the mirror looked different now, softer maybe, but stronger too. The girl who stared back wasn't hiding anymore. She was whole. I dressed carefully, choosing a pastel skirt and a neat blouse, brushed my hair until it shone, and added just enough makeup to feel like myself. As I walked to school, my heart thudded faster with every step, especially when I reached the quiet stretch of road where the attack had happened. I stopped for just a moment, breathing deep, then kept walking. I refused to give that place power over me. When I stepped into my first class, the room erupted in applause. For a second, I didn't understand. But then I saw the smiles, real ones, full of warmth. The sound filled me up like sunlight, and I felt tears sting my eyes. For the first time, I believed I really belonged. At lunch, Liam found me in the cafeteria. "You look great, Sarah," he said, his voice low and careful. "It's really good to have you back." "Thanks," I said, smiling. He hesitated, then confessed. "I keep thinking this was my fault. I should have walked you home that day. I was scared of what people would say, but I promise you that'll never happen again." Before I could respond, he took my hand right there in front of everyone. Conversations faltered, a few heads turned. He didn't care. I realized then that maybe he'd been changing right along with me. By the end of the week, the shadows of fear had mostly lifted. Teachers treated me no differently than anyone else, and my friends stayed close. I was excused from gym class but took sewing instead, learning how to stitch fabric with the same patience I was stitching my life back together. That Friday, Liam asked if I wanted to go to a movie. Emily practically squealed when she heard. "He really likes you, Sarah," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Just be yourself." That night, as we walked to the theater, Liam slipped his arm around my waist. I didn't pull away. We didn't need to talk much. The silence between us felt easy. During the movie, his arm rested around my shoulders, and I leaned in, feeling safe in a way I hadn't in a long time. When he walked me home afterward, we lingered at the front door beneath the porch light. He looked nervous, then smiled, and kissed me gentle, tentative, but real. It wasn't like the stories or the movies. It was warm, human, and full of something new. Hope. Mom was waiting in the living room when I came in, reading on the couch. "You okay, Sarah?" she asked, glancing up. I touched my lips, still smiling. "I'm fine, Mom. Really fine." And I was. The weeks that followed passed in quiet transformation. I started hormone therapy under Dr. Chen's care, and slowly, naturally, my body began to reflect the woman I already knew I was. Life didn't turn into a fairy tale overnight. There were still looks, whispers, questions, but none of it could shake me anymore. I had already survived the worst, and I'd found love, friendship, and a sense of peace that once felt impossible. Years later, when I finally scheduled the surgery that would complete my journey, I packed a small overnight bag and made one stop before the hospital. Maple Grove Cemetery was quiet that morning, sunlight glinting off the dew-damp grass. I knelt beside Dad's stone, tracing the carved letters of his name. "Hey, Dad," I whispered. "It's Sarah. You were right. You know about following what's in your heart. I just wanted you to see me, really see me." The wind stirred the leaves, a soft rustle that felt almost like an answer. I smiled through the tears. "I miss you, but I'm okay. I finally got it right." I stood, brushed the dirt from my skirt, and walked back toward the road, head high, heart steady, ready for whatever came next.